Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I painted the monster of Frankenstein from Marvel Crisis Protocol. And I'm talking about this little guy here. I did a little off-color scheme, a bit different than the box art for the skin tones, but I really enjoyed painting this guy and the outcome, of course. So I'm going to show you how I did it. Now to start off, if you like this kind of comment, please consider subscribing to the channel and leave a like and a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Now before we got started, I primed my model in a bright gray primer. I used gray cere as an undertone, and the base of this mini is already unique and done, so there's no modeling there. I used Kislev Flesh as a very bright skin tone. And of course, the monster of Frankenstein is not really this bright, so we're going to darken it down in the further steps. This Frankenstein's monster came in a pack of 4 called the Monsters Unleashed, including a mummy, Dracula, and a werewolf. So it was like a nice monster pack, and in this time of year it's fun to focus on the bad guys, right? On the monsters. So as you can see here, there is some skin to be painted. The lower arms, the face, the neck. Make sure to let that dry before we are going to continue. And we're going to be adding some colors. To start, I'm washing the entire skin with Bealtan green, or any green oil or shade you have. Try and avoid puddles, of course, but make sure to get a nice green coverage. You can even go over it twice if you want. Make sure to let it dry in between, of course. Next step when dry is adding Apothecary White, and I love this because it's a gray tone, and instead of non-oil, which is a really black and dark color, this adds kind of a grayish shade over it, and the skin of Frankenstein's monster is a bit dulled down, you know? Now this might seem a bit dark, the gray that you're seeing here, but it's kind of because it's still a tiny bit wet and the light is reflecting on it. The end result is more subtle. For the greens, I used Caliban green on the shirt as a base color, and we're going to be highlighting that further on. There is some tiny pieces of skin showing through here, and make sure that you're not covering it with green. Next, I mixed some mood green into Caliban green and picked out actually most of the shirt, focusing of course on all the raised areas, all the edges, to add some definition, so leave some darkness in there, but leave some natural darkness in there. So the bottom of a shady part, the lower part of his arm, so the entire part on his underarm, because of course that would not really reflect any light. Now this way you already get some definition of the muscles, but we're going to take it one step further, of course. And you guessed it, we're gonna do that with some pure mood green. Nice and bright. It's nice to have some bright elements in this otherwise dark mini. Now for this step I'm focusing on smaller parts, so only an edge highlights, some subtle edges here and there, some definition to the muscles, but smaller areas than you painted before, so you get a transition from dark to bright, or the other way around. If you want, you can thin down your paint just a little bit, but don't make it too runny, as it's going to be drying up not really nice and losing some sharpness to the definition you're trying to create. And of course, as a second step, you can water down your paint a little bit and create some transitions between the layers. Now for the coat, or the fur coat, I'm using Rhinox hide. And we're going to be continuing with some base colors before finishing this. I'm also using this Rhinox hide on the boots. And as you can see, I'm painting straight from the pot here. Next, Corvus Black as a base color for the hair. I didn't want it to be black, so this gray black is a perfect color to start with. So I'm painting all the tiny hairs on the inside and outside. And next we're going to be highlighting it with some Celestra Gray, which is kind of a bluish gray and adds a kind of a ghostly effect to this model, which I really like. So instead of going bright, we're going to keep it nice and dark. And with this mixture, we're going to make some transitions from dark to bright, focusing on the hairs on top and in front of the head. So which would normally be the most visible, the most reflective of light. And we're going to take it one step further by adding some pure Celestra Gray to your paints. And this time only picking out some tiny hairs here in front and focusing on the top of the head. Adding some nice fine lines here. For the chain, I'm using good old lead belcher. Now, before highlighting the rest of the browns and the chain, we're going to paint the pants. It's kind of a jeans thing he's wearing, so I'm using Stegadon Scale Green as a base color, which is a really nice color to start with, to paint some dark jeans. Once you've covered the entire jeans, that will be the last of the base colors, and we're going to be painting the highlights and shades. Now to start with the coat, I'm adding a dry brush coat of Morphing Brown to get this nice furry look. So you get the darks in the middle, then the deeper parts, and the highlights all above. I'm doing the same on the boots, also using a dry brush. You can add some fine lines there, of course, as well. Next step in highlighting will be Baylor Brown, which is an even brighter variant, close to a yellowy brown. And also with a dry brush, I'm picking out the very edges of the coat and focusing on the shoulders and the chest. I'm using Null Null on the chain and darken it down quite a bit. And then for the pants, I'm mixing some Fenrisian Gray in the Stegadon Scale Green, and I'm making some horizontal movements, as you can see. That way you get a kind of stitched look. So first some vertical lines, and then some horizontals to kind of blend it into the dark. As you can see here. Leave those edges nice and dark. On the back, I used very little highlights just on the side of the leg, more or less, and again with some straight lines to emphasize that this is cloth, well, jeans. I'm doing the same with pure Fenrisian Gray as a final highlight, but focusing on smaller areas, of course, but again making some lines from left to right, so horizontal or, well, depends on how you're holding your model, right? You get the idea. You get a nice transition in colors, and it gives the idea of something stretchy, something clothy. Next, with some pure Dawnstone, I painted the base of the model. It has its own unique base, which is kind of fun, so we're going to pay attention to it. I then added a layer of Quelea green shade all over the gray. It gives this nice, eerie, spooky look. Then some Dark Oath flesh is what I used on the tiles and the piles of rubble that are lying there, just to have some extra color on the base. Now some final details. I'm using palette witch flesh for his eyes. And I'm gonna paint in a pupil with pure Abaddon black. And then he's got these stitches, which I imagined were pure metal. So I'm using a lead belcher again on all these stitched areas on his hands, his forehead. Then all metal parts I'm highlighting with Stormhost silver, so add some extra shine to the very tops of the chains here, and also the stitches on his hand and forehead. Then with some Carrick stone, I'm painting the tiny skull that he is crushing with his foot. If you want, you can shade it with some Null before continuing to the next step. I wanted it to kind of blend in with the rubble on the floor. As a highlight, I'm using Ushapti bone to the very top of the skull and the tip of the nose, just to make it pop out a little bit more, as it's a tiny detail on the floor that you don't want to miss out on. And that's it for Frankenstein's monster. Looking bright and dark at the same time. I really love how it turned out. Now, if you like this kind of comment, please consider following me on my Patreon page, where I'll be making a lot more content like this. And please leave a comment below, because I love hearing from you guys, and your support means a lot to me, so thank you in advance. For now, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!